On today's What Do We Do podcast, we're joined by Scott Wetherbee. Scott's the Director of Athletics at Eastern Michigan University. And with everything going on in the world of college athletics, Scott's just the guy to break it on down. We'll discuss the academics of being an athlete, the athletics of being an athlete, but maybe most importantly, the business of being a student athlete. It's going to be a great show, so hit the subscribe button, give us a follow, and let's go. Welcome back to another episode of the What Do We Do podcast. I'm your host, Dewey Steffen, and this is another guest episode. These are episodes where we bring on in a leader from the community who has a story to tell, knowledge to share, and advice to give. And then we bring them on into the studio to drop their knowledge on all of us. And in our community, we always say team because together, everyone achieves more. And today's guest is the perfect person to have with everything going on in the world of college athletics. Being a student athlete, talking NIL deals, talking about facilities, everything that goes on in the student athletic world today. We are happy to have with us Scott Wetherbee. Scott is the Director of Athletics. He's also a Vice President at Eastern Michigan University. And I'm going to have him introduce himself, and we're going to get on into the world of college athletics. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Dewey. I'm really excited to be here and join you.
Absolutely. And there's a lot to get into. We're going to talk about the academics of being an athlete, the athletics of being an athlete, and we're going to save the best for last, the business of being a student athlete during the show. Yep. But Scott, we always start the show with a game we like to play called High-Low. And what High-Low is a game where we're going to ask you the high point and low point of your career to this point.
So I would say my high point as an athletic director, really there's a couple things. It's hard because there's so many different avenues, but one is just what we've done with our facilities at Eastern Michigan, and having built a 60,000 square foot end zone building that people said we couldn't do, and so that was certainly a highlight, and that it goes back to our student athlete experience with that. I would also say the moment we went out to Boise and won the Idaho Potato Bowl, and it was the first bowl win since 1987, and just seeing how our student athletes reacted, the football players and coaches, and what it meant to get to 9 wins. So that was certainly a highlight as well. So those are ones that kind of stand out to me. They're usually based on our student athletes and seeing their reaction and knowing what it means. Awesome. I would say that's my high.
Okay.
And then I will say I did have a high moment while I was at Mississippi State when we were number 1 in the country. I was there with the Dak Prescott years and had the first CFP to ever come out. Mississippi State was number 1, and being able to walk onto the field at Alabama when we're number 1 and they're number 2, that was pretty cool too. So I will say those are the high moments. And then on the low side, getting here at Eastern Michigan, 8 months on the job, being told that we had to, find $2.5-3 million in cuts, and so cutting 4 sports was certainly the low point. And looking back at that now, 7 years later, 6.5, 7 years later, it just would I have done things differently? Probably, because it really cut me pretty deep. But that was the one low point for me. Now, I think we're better for it from a financial standpoint. We're certainly in a better shape as an athletic department, and it allowed our other teams to have an opportunity to be successful as well. So that would certainly be my low moment.
Okay, well, it sounds like that low moment has turned. It's in the rearview mirror now, and you're full speed ahead.
Yes, yeah, that was 2018. So through that, we had to go through a lawsuit and some of those things, and that's all done with now too. And so I think we're on the good side of that now.
Well, that's awesome, and we appreciate you sharing,
Yep.
being vulnerable a little bit,
Yep.
and we'll get back to the highs. The highs are always better, but
Yep.
you might learn more from the lows,
Yeah. That's right.
and that's part of life. And so, with our audience out there, the next generation, by and large, we're always trying to give them opportunities to learn, so they don't make the same mistakes directly. They can learn from us and not have to go through the same thing twice.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. I mean, that's what we're in the business of educating. And you said student first. I mean, we certainly at Eastern Michigan take a lot of pride in that, and so we have to, um, whether it's education from getting their degree or educating them on other things we're going to talk about, right? When you start getting into NIL and their finances and taxes and um, resumes and what are things that we're doing to help them to prepare them for what we say champions in life. We want them to be champions while they're here, but we're really trying to educate and make it so that they have a great experience once they leave Eastern Michigan.
All
Yeah.
right, so we're going to dumb it down, and we're going to get right to the point right now for the audience that's listening and watching. If you're a high school student or even considering transferring from one school to another school, what's like the person, or what is the best way to go about seeing what's a fit? Is it reaching out to the coach of the sport? Is it the assistant coach? There's all these little talks about, as a sophomore, you can't do this. As a junior in high school, you have to do this. And there's all these rules within NCAA, which are great. But again, do they go right to the AD? Do they stand out front and dress to success for you? Or
Yeah.
so what's the best way to tell the parents and those high school students that are trying to make it to the college level?
Yeah, this is unique and it can get tricky at times, right? I even went through it myself with my daughter being a gymnast, trying to figure out how do you get your name and face and opportunity in front of a coach. And again, this is a little more sport specific at times, but um, it can never hurt to reach out to and be educated on what you want to be. So, if, say you're a linebacker, you don't need to send an email to the offensive coordinator, right? So you need to at least have some semblance. What happens a lot is I get emails to the athletic director saying I'd like to talk to the baseball. Like, go on, find the baseball coach, and actually send something to them. Try to have video, try to have some kind of resume of what kind of accomplishments have you had. If you're in baseball, what's been your batting average? Do you have some fielding percentage? Do you have a coach that they could talk to? Tell us what kind of club you're on. And so every sport is different. Football has a recruiting coordinator. So you go through the recruiting coordinator. At Eastern Michigan, you're going to talk to Wilson. And you go to Wilson, and then we also have a director of ops that helps manage that. The head coach and usually the coordinators get so many notices and emails and stuff. But most of you probably have some kind of huddle account, or you have some kind of profile, and make sure you share those profiles with your coaches. If you're a gymnast and you're in a club, in your gymnastics world, the four apparatuses, and tell us your best, send some video and get it to the assistant coaches or the head coach. And I'd copy them all and see if anybody, and if they don't respond, you do it again, right? Go to camps. I would really recommend, if you really want to be seen and noticed, I would go to camps. It's worth, the $100 to go
So
to a
they're not
soccer
just money
camp.
grabs for, and again, and I don't mean that in a bad
No,
way, like
that's right.
for the support
Yeah.
personnel, the
Yep.
assistant coaches. This subsidizes and many times their payroll
Yep.
through the university. And so
Yep.
I am an advocate for them as well,
Yep.
but I also know they're not all built the same.
Yep.
But I hear from parents that reach out to me. I'm not going to send my son or daughter to one because it's just a money grab.
Yeah.
No one's going to be there. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I would totally disagree. And I would say that sure, is it a source of income? It is a little bit. I'll be honest, if a youth kid is going to pay $100 for a 2 or 3 day camp, at the end of the day, the coaches aren't really making that much, and a lot of it's just babysitting, right? I mean, they can get, because typically our camps are 8 to 13-year-olds for the most part, and then we try to have elite camps where you're high school age, and it's open to everybody for that, but you're trying to get that elite group. Once you're in high school, I would try to get, if you want a coach to notice you and actually see your work ethic and be able to see what type of human you are, and see how you interact with others, see how you do in coaching. Like when somebody's trying to coach you, are you actually listening and trying to get better? That's where you get noticed. And then typically you actually have coaches from other institutions, especially in the football world, our coaches go down to Ohio State. They're at Ohio State's camp, and then they'll invite a lot of D2 schools around here to our camp, right? And we'll have 500 kids, and that's a chance. And then a lot of them, especially in the football world, that's where the offer comes from, is at camp. So I would encourage camps, and so if you've got a volleyball player in the community and you think, well, I can be, if you're shooting for Power Four and you think you can go play at Michigan or Michigan State, I'd go to their camp. I would try to absolutely get to their camp. If that's not where you think you can get to that level, but say you might be able to get to an Eastern Michigan, a Central, a Western, a Saginaw Valley, Oakland, whatever it is, and you think you have an interest there, go to their camp. One, you get to know the coach and you get to know the assistants and usually who else works, the team. So now you get to figure out, like, do I want to be around these? And so to me, it's a really a good way. It's actually a fairly cheap way. I mean, our camps don't cost as much as Michigan State. So it's an affordable way to figure out, do I like being around these coaches and get a little trial, and what's the facilities like, and maybe I get to see the locker room and those things. So I would encourage. I don't, certainly not a money grab at Eastern, I'll tell you that.
All right, and we're gonna appreciate that, and that's
Yeah,
great. And we're on the same page
yeah.
on this topic, and then we're gonna pivot to the next topic. But travel sports, AAU, yes, it might be sport specific, but what's your thought as a father, but also as the director of athletics at Eastern Michigan University, from what you believe directly and or indirectly from your coaches, et cetera? Do these student athletes need to be playing anything besides just on their high school team? And or the other side, particularly in soccer, in some states, if you play high school soccer, they won't put you on their elite travel team. Like
Yep.
they don't want it commingled. So,
Yep.
what are your thoughts for our listeners out there for that?
Yeah, I would say I much prefer multi-sport student athletes. And I just see the burnout rate and how there's just such an expectation. If all you do is soccer 365 days a year, and that's all you've known and all you've done, it gets it's taxing on your body. I just feel like you get better, well-rounded people if they take a break from it, step away, go do something else. And maybe that's not 2 or 3 months, right? Maybe it's not, you're not going to go play basketball or you're going to go play softball or something else, but at least have some other hobbies and other things that can get you away. I'm not telling you to just sit on the couch for 2 months. I mean, you got to be active, but um, and then I think you gotta, what do they say? Skate not to the puck, but where the puck is going. So I mean, you've got to figure out, if I want to be a Division 1 athlete, you have to understand what it takes to be a Division 1 athlete. You can't go and do what you're doing now, and feel like you can go just be a Division 1 athlete. And so that I say that to figure out, if it's soccer, is it club? Great example. My daughter is a gymnast. She was in a great place, and I loved her in her club. But you didn't do high school gymnastics. It was for those that weren't going to go to college. And if you wanted to get seen, you had to be in the club scene, um, and then go and do these nationals. So, right. So we made trips to Florida a few times, and Arizona and Colorado, and we spent a lot of money to travel to do
More
those
money
things.
grabs.
Tho-
No, I'm
those
just kidding.
those
I'm just
are quite a bit. But you go where the coaches are. And
sure.
so if that's something that's important to you, I'm not saying, and again, I think parents have to have an expectation. I was fortunate enough, I mean, my daughter's fortunate, I can afford to do that. And some people can't do that. And so you've got to, don't put yourself in debt. As a financial guy, you would say, I mean, don't
Don't
put
do
don't
debt.
don't do
Don't
debt.
do
Yeah,
debt.
and don't do that to your student, to your daughter or your son. to put that kind of pressure and expectation on them that we're doing all this so you can get a Division I scholarship. It's like, that shouldn't be the focus. You should be plugging that money away so you can help pay for their education when it comes, if that's the case. But so again, I'm long-winded to say, if it's really good in your high school and you have an opportunity, we get people from high school all the time. It just depends on the sport, right? Lacrosse is probably a little bit more club. Basketball is a lot of AAU, but you can still do high school stuff. Volleyball is a lot of club as well, but most of them can still do high school and then still do their club and do that. So again, it's just kind of by sport, but understand and try to learn your sport and then kind of go from there is what. Again, you got to do some homework. Things aren't just going to come, and just sending an email to somebody is not going to work either, right? So there are things that you've got to find ways to be seen, especially if you're in a small town too, right? You got to go to bigger cities to be in the club to have access to other things and other people as well.
Right. And some of those, again, if all of the other top tier athletes are playing club or AAU, you kind of have to just to get the competition that you need to play. If you're just playing
Yeah.
at your local rec league and you might be a baller, whatever that
Yep.
means,
Yep.
and you're dominating, you don't know really where you are in the
Yep.
competitive landscape.
Yep.
And then there's also, is it going to be junior college or D3, NAIA, et
Yep.
cetera, et cetera. So a lot of it is person by person, and then town by town or at a sport by
Yeah,
sport.
because you want to have a parameter, right? I mean, you want to be able to figure out where you stack, um, and it's tough because you the greatest. I mean, I was a heck of a baseball player in high school, and I was fortunate enough to grow up in Kalamazoo and be crosstown rivals with Derek Jeter, and I was A-Rod before A-Rod, so I was a shortstop and moved to third base when I played with Jeter, right? So but you end up you figure out, like, everybody's like, man, Scott, you're going to go and do all these things, and you realize, man, there's a lot of really good people out there, and it's very competitive. And if you don't go out and play others and be a part of that, you can be in a small town and score 30 points a game, but you get into other, like, how did they end up at D3? Well, it's like they didn't play competition and they were really good in their world, but then there's this whole other region or bigger world. So, yeah, we can go on for days on those.
Yeah, and
Uh,
in examples where it's a student athlete that you don't really know where you fall, I'm a proponent because I went through it where you could start at a junior college. You can start at what is at a level that you might even think is less than what you deserve.
Yeah.
Scholarship's a scholarship.
Yep.
Academics are still academics, and you can still grind and have the grit to get to where you need to go.
Yep.
And whether it's the transfer portal or just a 2-year school that you would have to transfer out, there's examples all over the place of a
Yep.
junior college that's now in the NFL. And so
Yep.
there again, it might not be the majority of the people, but there's opportunities, right? And that just goes back how bad you want it,
Yep.
determination, and that's in life. And that doesn't whether that's on the sport that you're playing in the
Mhm.
or the classroom. It's you got to have determination. You get it. Life ain't easy, and a lot of it with student athletes. A lot of businesses look for student athletes after they're
Yes.
graduated because they know that they have the skill set
Yeah.
to get
Yep.
success in the business world.
Yeah. The time management, leadership skills, and just being able to have relationships with others, have a team goal, in doing that. So yeah, no, totally.
From your role as an athletic director, what do you look for a student, or what do the students consider that maybe they should consider as they're coming in,
Yep.
to campus, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think, well, first you can start with, what does Eastern Michigan athletics look like? We're 19 sports. We have, and when you have a track and field that in cross country that counts for 6 of those, you really only have 14 head coaches that, would report up. Now you have sport administrators, that my senior staff, you divvy up the sports to let them kind of work together, that come to you. But I'm a big believer of that. I'm more of a pyramid where the student athletes, we do this for them, and I try not to be at the top. It's all about them and focusing on them. We have 500 student athletes at Eastern Michigan, and so that's a lot. And we have a lot of recruiting. And to your point, it's changed a lot. We used to go heavy, heavy, heavy high school, And it depends on the sport. Every sport is different. And then you have now this transfer, and it used to be you transfer one time, and then you had them, and they couldn't leave. And now it's, well, they can try transfer multiple times, and so your strategy has to change a little bit, and the dynamics of just the way college business is now. So we just try to be as creative as we can and be on the forefront and think about what are the things that we can do creatively that makes it beneficial for our student athletes. Our focus obviously is on the experience. When I meet with a recruit and their parents, we talk about what are we going to do in the classroom. We are going to do community service and be a part of our community. And then obviously we want to win championships. But we start getting in their majors, and we start trying to figure out, like, how can we help them to eventually, as I said earlier, champions in life. And now some of the student athletes come here, they have a chance to go pro. You can get there. I mean, we have 8 active players in the NFL right now. And so you can have that opportunity. But most of them aren't going to have that, right? And you're going to have to develop them in a different way. And so we try to sell the fact that you come here and you'll be well-rounded. We're going to take care of you, and try to show you all the steps. So then when you do leave with your degree, that you can go out and be successful. And so the sales pitch is different, though, for every one of our coaches, depending on what the focus is. And to me, it's relationships. You want to develop a good relationship. You want to um, be able to get to know your student athletes, and they have to know you care. And everybody wants what's best, what's next. They're always reaching for that next thing, and so we've got to figure out how to sustain that here so they don't want to leave, and have that retention, and work together with campus. And then I report up. Obviously, I'm a vice president, so I report up to the president and to the board. So that's who I talk to on a weekly or daily basis, and making sure that I'm trying to do what I can for enrollment for the university, and that we're being a good stewards on campus, that we're giving back to people on campus, that our faculty appreciate our athletes and our athletic program to help promote and try to help retention, enrollment, and all of that. So there's different fabric or different places that we have, that I have to deal with on a daily basis. But our central focus is the student athlete and their experience here. And not everybody's going to have a great experience. You can't appease everybody, but we sure do try, and hopefully they know and see and feel that we care. Is kind of our focus.
When you get into it with the students, do they really, because again, they're younger, they're young adults,
Hmm.
most of them.
Yep.
Are they misguided? Are they coming in and know exactly who they are and what they want to be? Do they really look at the academics and what you provide for them outside of the athletic world? Or no, 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 they want to just know who's going to give them the best scholarship or the best stipends or the
Yep.
best branding and awareness so they can be business ballers later. So
Yeah.
how does it work that way?
Yeah, and I think at Eastern, we're a little different than your Power Four, where money matters a little bit more than at Eastern. It's a little bit more, you're guided and on what is important, and to each their own. And actually, each sport is different. That's what's really challenging and unique in the expectations. And so, you can take a lacrosse program, and what does the demographics of lacrosse look like versus a football program, and then what do you see on TV versus what you don't. I know in prepping for this, you had mentioned to me that you might say, "What would I tell my 18-year-old self?" Right. So I have a daughter that's at Eastern Michigan as a sophomore, and I try to remind them that it's okay to not know what you want to do. I was a senior in college and had no idea what was going to happen, right? And you're still trying to figure it out. Some come in and know exactly what they want to do. And so you're recruiting that one differently. Like, yes, I know I want to go into bio. I know I want to do this. It's like, okay, I'm going to find a biology professor to talk to them on their recruiting trip. I'm going to show them the internships that they can get to and how we're going to make them successful. That might be totally different than meeting with a basketball player that's like, I'm coming here to play basketball, man. Just, put me in a communications major. Let's figure out. And then we work on it. Now we have a support group. We have a whole academic support group to help them to, get focused. But again, they're 18 years old when they come in and they're 22 or 23 when they leave. And we're hopeful that by the time they leave at 22 or 23, that we've done a good job of figuring out what their career path is going to be, especially if it's not professionally as well. So to me, it's unique to each coach. It's unique to each class. And we just, we try to focus. Like we had somebody on a few weeks ago, a recruit come in from England, right? And so I'm going over a list of like how many internationals. We have 75 internationals, student athletes at Eastern from 26 different countries. But I went back and looked, and I helped her, and I said, hey, we actually have 6 from the UK, from England and Great Britain. And so, that helps in the recruiting process. Like, oh, I'm not the only one. And oh, by the way, maybe you can run into them or set up a meeting. So they're like, hey, tell me about your experience coming from England to here. And so those are the things that we have to think about in the, the recruitment area of it. So
Yeah, and I think the support network that kind of what you're referencing, I think is key. And for our listeners out there in podcast nation and our viewers out there in YouTube world that have followed the podcast, we sponsor through Great Lakes Wealth, our investment company. We sponsor student athletes. This is our second season of doing so. And I was blessed back in the day to be a student athlete as well. There were no NIL deals.
mhm,
We did have scholarships, which were great. But
yep,
through all of that, whenever I talk to our athletes on camera or off, we do talk about the resources. And so
yep,
on the playing field or in the weight room, and so the facilities, I want to get to the
yep,
facilities at Eastern Michigan and some of the things
yep,
that you've done, and even at the bigger schools like University of Michigan or Alabama or whatever. It's
mhm,
almost like, they have to build these Taj Mahals and these
yep,
facilities that they can go and shoot pool and go bowling,
mhm,
whatever the case is. But back to the seriousness of it, having tutors, having academic support along the way.
mhm,
We've talked in interviews with our student athletes about, again, when they're on the road, number one, the professors, the class goes on when they're not there.
yep,
And so sometimes the professors are supportive, and they should be all the time, but sometimes
mhm.
they're like,
They're
who do you
not.
think you are? You're
Mhm,
not better. And so they have to deal with the politics there.
yep,
So I'm sure your department, smooths some of those things over. But then there's other opportunities where those professors really appreciate, and they actually maybe want. I don't know if they want an autograph of your
mhm,
student athlete, but they really aren't, being difficult. They're
yep,
being supportive. But we have said that there's been tutors on the road, and there's all
yes.
24 hours, 7 days a week. So maybe talk about how, when you're talking to those potential student athletes, that it is, all those different pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, we have great professors. You're going to have a few that are, frustrated that you're not in class and stuff. But we have a whole system set up where, and we do at the beginning of the year, we give notices out from the student athlete to the professors of like, hey, these are going to be a travel day or they're going to be on the road. And, they're supposed to be excused absences and asking you to work with them. And the feedback I get from professors is, my best students are student athletes. Your student athletes, we ask them to sit in the front of class and be very active when they're there. And then when they're not there, the professors realize it. But typically it's like, I love having so and so in my class and I've had no issues. I wish all of our students were like your student athletes. So it's usually on the flip side. We just actually it's coming out, it just came out here and our graduation rate, we're at 89%. And the thing that I like about that is this is my cohort. So I came here in July of 2017, and this cohort is the fall of 2017 graduates. And so we're at 89% of our student athletes graduate within that 6-year period. And that's the highest we've ever been. We're at a 3.4 GPA right now as a cumulative with 500 student athletes. So very proud of that. It's an all-time high. And so we're doing the right things. And so then our staff, a student comes here, you've got a whole team behind you. We call it our Student Athlete Support Services, SAS, and Elizabeth does a great job of leading that group. But we have 5 or 6 full-time staff that work with you. They help you with scheduling classes, and you work with advisors on campus for that. But we do study tables for everybody. They work with your professors if you're going to be away. They know deadlines to help out. So we coddle them a little bit. I'll admit. I mean, we've got to hold hands a little bit to get them there. But typically, that's usually your freshman, and then if you're doing well in the classroom, you don't need as much academic help. If you aren't, then we'll help you, and we'll have those study tables and stuff. So the support is there, and I think campus, we've done a really good job of seeing how our graduation rate is way better than campuses, and our retention is better, and I think they even talk about we could learn from athletics on how to maybe do better on campus, and so it helps that we have a support service for that for just our 500 population. So that's the kind of the academic side of things, but I'm super proud of that. I mean, when we talked about high moments, I mean, being able to say that we're at the highest GPA and highest graduation rates we've ever had, and our APR scores are great. That makes me proud. I mean, that's what we're here for. That's why we're doing it.
Well, and we might be bouncing around a little bit, but what makes me proud as a business owner, as someone who has student athletes that we're paying through brand deals and them being ambassadors, et cetera. I've asked them, and D1 athletes,
Yep.
NAIA athletes, junior college, JUCO athletes, all of them, what made you do a deal with us, or what was
Yep.
it that the light bulb went off, or the opportunity you
Yep.
saw was there with us? And all of them, maybe it could be some money, perhaps, but
Yep.
all of them, above anything else, was the contacts you'll have, the actual education you can give me. I don't
Yep.
need to be a business major to
Yep.
just know this is real world. And one of our podcasts, little plug, real world, real NIL.
Yep.
So, in the world where after graduation, whether you stay an athlete and need to really focus on your brand and what's
Yep.
there, or you don't, you go into private practice or a nurse or a doctor, whatever it might be, you want to use us as a resource.
Yes.
So we become a postgraduate resource
Yep.
and advisor to them. And when you're in our family, you're in our family for life. So
Yeah.
it's those are the non-financial elements that go along with it.
Yeah, and I'd say, I mean, we're obviously in the world of educating, and the skills that you can help put in their toolbox. I mean, that means a lot, and I think it's really neat that you just aren't going to Power Four schools and helping out. You're actually touching the junior college NAIA in a place like Eastern Michigan. I mean, we have great student athletes. We have great people that want to have that same experience as a Power Four institution does, and we do everything we can to make it so they feel that. And having people like yourself and your support like that means a lot. And again, we need to equip them to be ready for getting out in society and doing right by people, and but managing their money the right way, and understanding. I just never understood why we don't have classes that talk about taxes, why we don't have classes that talk about getting a mortgage. Like, I had no idea what I was doing when I was going to get a mortgage. And when somebody told me, I could have bought a house for $100,000, I thought, how can I afford a house for $100,000? Well, back then I didn't know that was a $600 a month payment. I could afford that, but I was never, there wasn't a way. And so we try to give them those life skills. We have a platform actually that is AI driven, where they can develop their resume, they can develop cover letters. They can pull in job descriptions of something that they're trying to interview for, and put it in and say, help update my resume based on what that's looking, or help me with my cover letter to make sure I'm hitting the right things. And these are all, again, just templates that they can use to help further themselves. And then even like thank you letters back after you go meet with somebody, and set up an email that's afterwards, like, it was great meeting with you. I mean, all of these things that then it's almost like a LinkedIn, but just for athletes. And it's a great little feature. So that's something that we try to share. We do uh, a dress for success, right? So it's like what not to wear and what to wear, and I get to get up, and they had me do one that how I shouldn't come in sloppy, and then other people would come dressed up right. And like, how do I go to an interview, and what are the things, and what type of questions should I ask, and what should I take to the interview? All of those things are things that we should be doing and just should be a part of our curriculum. Um, to me, it should be obviously university wide, but I focus on my 500 student athletes and trying to provide as much of that as possible. So,
Okay, we're going to pivot now and go into the business of athletics in college. Okay, it's big business, big NIL, it's big time. Okay,
Mhm.
Scott. So let's get into the business of it, and let's start with the business from the student athlete perspective, or yours related to them. It's their brand, it's their identity. Maybe they don't even want to go suit up. They want to be on your team with a scholarship. They want to wear their own jersey on the sidelines. They want to rep our brand also. And they actually don't want to play that much because they don't want to get hurt. And I'm kidding. They actually want to get
No,
out there.
that's right.
But we're going to talk about, again, let's talk about their brand and, again, the business that they go through. What components go into their financial package. We're going to start with the scholarship,
Yep.
but then what else, should they be considering, and what do they think they get, or do they get?
Yeah, it's interesting because the business of college athletics has shifted significantly. The business used to just be managing budgets and teams, and now it's, hey, how can we filter dollars to our student athletes, and to try to help them out? And so obviously, from the scholarship world, there's buckets, is that I call it. You have your scholarships, so that's tuition fees, room, board, books that the university will provide. So that can come in all forms, right? A full ride to 50% to 25%. You have that bucket. Another bucket is cost of attendance, and so that's the kind of added above and beyond what it costs to be on campus, what expenses, living expenses, those types of things. At a place like Eastern Michigan, that's like $4,500. And then the third bucket is Alston. There was a lawsuit by last name was Alston, and they won. And basically, it allows for institutions to provide up to $5,980, like a random number. Why it isn't just 6,000 to our student athletes through an academic award. So it's achieved based on some kind of parameters of academics. So that's the third bucket. Now the fourth bucket is going to be a new bucket for us, and that's the revenue share. And we've got to figure out. I'm still kind of navigating how we're going to do that, and what it will look like, and what percentage of our revenue would go, and who gets it. So we're still navigating that. And then the fifth bucket is NIL, which currently is off campuses and provided by businesses and collectives that have been put together. And that fifth bucket, I do believe, is going to come in house for quite a few people. But I still think NIL, name, image, likeness, is never going to go away, and it shouldn't. Um, I was always frustrated in my time that you could a regular student on campus could have a business or use their brand to make money, and yet because I played a sport, I couldn't. I always struggled with that. So I was a real big proponent of name, image, and likeness, but I was a proponent of it in the sense that, you know, Peyton Manning is on TV painting, and is it Peyton, right? And but he's using his image to make money to promote something else. And that was the whole concept behind allowing our student athletes, if you've got followers or you've got some brand that you can go help sell a car and it would help that business. All that's what it was intended, and that's not what has happened. It's been, let's put a bunch of money together in a pool and let's go buy players and do that, and that's the world we're in. And so that's challenging at a place like Eastern Michigan, to be able to do that. And so we are navigating it, and we got to be creative. But to me, those are the five buckets when you talk about what we're going to be able to provide. And right now, we're providing three of those, and it looks like we're going to add one or two more and bring those in on campus. And certainly at Michigan State and Michigan around here, they're going to try to do everything they can to fully fund that revenue share, which is, a $20 million investment. But some of that includes each of those buckets. So it's not like they get 20 million to revenue share. They can add scholarships to sports, and that counts towards it. And they can add more cost of attendance or more Alston, and some of that can go towards that revenue share number. So it's clear as mud.
Yeah. Is there a formula or whatever, whether it's just general best practice or legitimately defined by some of the legislation and legal outcomes to where every student athlete at the university gets something, or is it all random as can be, where the celebrity superstar athlete gets everything, and the last person on whatever team gets nothing? And
Yeah, well, what people fail to realize is that already happens. So not everybody's treated the same currently, and now what's different in what we call our head count sports. So you think of volleyball, gymnastics, men's and women's basketball, and football. You would offer if I offered you a scholarship, it was a full ride. But the other sports, it's you might be on 25% and I might be on 50% and somebody else is on 100%. And so you spread out your scholarships. Well, that's happening now. That's going to happen for all sports. So even football now, you may only offer 50% to somebody and somebody else gets 25 and somebody else gets 100. So you're going to have this imbalance. And so when it comes to the revenue share, it is going to be all about basically who's better and who's not in one way, shape, or form, whether that's some choose academic side of that. Most people are going to choose performance and how they are as a teammate. And you're going to start, I've had these conversations with our coaches. Unfortunately, you're going to have to tier your team and you're going to have to figure out, what's most important to have a successful volleyball team. Is it middles? Is it outside hitters? Is it the libero? Is it the setter? Where are you gonna, and then how much money, if any, are you going to get? And then so the model that's out there that the house case, the settlement has is that 75% goes to football, 15% goes to men's basketball, and then 5% to women's basketball and 5% to everybody else. And so if you took a revenue share model like that within our athletic department, then our football program obviously would get say it's $1 million, they're getting $750,000 to spend amongst their team. Well, you're probably only going to spend that in your top 20 or top 25 student athletes. And then the rest will just be on some kind of scholarship that may or may not be a full ride now. And then you try to earn your way up and work your way up. And then if you're not happy, they go to another institution. And I even think that we need to be comfortable at Eastern that we may be developing a couple of people and they may leave. And we have to be okay with that and understand that's the nature of it. And that's where we were talking earlier. I would encourage that, like, well, maybe you didn't want to come to Eastern, but you can earn your way to something else. I don't want to become a junior college, and it's 2 years and bust, but because hopefully we're doing a good job and you want to stay.
that would be like the Kentucky model, where you're 2 years and bust because they're
Because you're going pro. That's right. And there's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
They embrace that, right? And
Right.
so,
Right.
again,
Maybe it's one and
yeah,
done.
and I'm like, I joked with Stan Heath, our basketball coach. I said, you should work with Izzo to tell him, like, if a couple of guys aren't ready yet, send them to us and we'll develop them for a couple of years and then they can move up and go there. And
You guys are all wearing green.
again, yeah, I mean, it
What's
just,
up?
yeah. And Stan worked with Tom and won a national championship. So, but, yeah, so those are the buckets, and then the share that we had talked about. It's not going to be treated evenly, and we're just going to have to kind of get used to that. And again, it's already there in our other sports. It's just going to be something new for basketballs and footballs of the world that have not had to really have. It's not a divided locker room, but it's going to be certainly somebody's going to be resourced more than somebody else.
Yeah, when I talk to either student athletes potentially to do deals with, or ones that we have done deals with, we talk to them because we might just pick one player from that team. We might be talking to 3 or 4 student athletes on that team, and we end just picking one because of resource capacities.
Yep.
And so we say we don't want you to be the one in the locker room that everyone's like, she's better than who she thinks she is, and we don't want them to separate themselves from her, or her to be, labeled in any particular way. So we always ask, and we've actually gotten, because I'm very protective. Like, I'm not here to create issues. I'm here to create solutions and help.
Yep.
And they've all said, at least I hope it's true, that no, it's been awesome. They just ask questions like, what's going on? And hey, that's cool. You did it. Like, teach me something. So it's been inclusive. And I don't know at the high elite level, if there's two people jockeying for who's big
Yeah.
baller in the locker room. But
Yeah, but I would say hopefully you're doing your due diligence on the type of people they are because um, I would rather help somebody that I know that they're going to want to help their teammates or they're not going and they're very humble about it and make it as a win-win for your program, right? That I get to talk about Eastern Michigan, whatever, and I get to talk about our program, and they're going to pay me to do that, so that's great, right? And as opposed to I'm all high and mighty and walk into the locker room and I'm better than everybody else, and hopefully we don't have that culture. So
yeah, and at our level, we wouldn't, see that
yeah,
we're not changing lives,
no,
but if it's Shadur
nope,
Sanders to whoever
yeah,
else,
that's right.
that's its own,
It is.
own animal,
It
right?
it is
Which is
totally,
curious to me.
totally.
All right, well, let's wrap this up with another comment or two on this situation. You talk about those buckets. So
Mhm,
the first three buckets, we can get the fourth bucket. We understand is coming, but when you talk about that fifth bucket, that was NIL and the outside deals, the direct from student athlete to outside business bucket, which is getting larger and
mhm,
becoming one. When your coaches are presenting offers to come to Eastern Michigan or
right,
whatever, what is the financial package? Do you just put a big question mark in bucket five, or do you say, hey, we're going to help you, or we can't, we're at arm's length? But
yep,
that's a big number. Again,
yep,
recently there's a quarterback here locally that has changed his mind according to the media three or four times, and he's committed, decommitted, coming back. But it's all based again from the narrative of the media on the dollars that he's getting, and part of
yep,
that's the collective money.
yep,
But then there'll also be other outside monies, and I certainly have no idea what's going on with the details. But
yep,
when you commit, we'll give you those first four buckets,
yep,
but then I could probably get you another $1 million in bucket five. Like that's a kind
yeah.
of a how do you know?
Yeah, and that's usually the one that they're all paying attention to, right? Because they would anticipate that might be the bigger number of them. And so in ours, at first you couldn't. All you could do is like, hey, here's a few people you may want to call, right? It wasn't, and then they finally changed it to where we can help negotiate, right? We can be a part of a third party to say, it'll take $5,000 for this person to come, or 25,000, or this is what offers are being made out there, and then we're almost like a go between, almost in a way. I'm almost an agent to try to help get a kid that we want to get. Um, but we do, you have a collective and you have others that want to help in the NIL space and you know who they are, then you're allowed to connect them. And a lot of times you connect them on the visit, right? And so they come in, we talk about our stuff, but then they can have a separate conversation with the collective, or they can have a separate conversation with whatever business may have interest or that's willing to help you out. And then um, usually the player or student athlete is pretty forthcoming on what their other offers are, and I don't always believe them either. Right? They're negotiating, and sometimes it's the parents and not the kids, and those things. So that's how it works now. I do think that you'll see a couple things can happen. They're going to start to look at supposedly where your NIL agreements are supposed to look like what your true value is, or that space is. And so supposedly you can't just give somebody $1 million because it's an NIL deal, but they truly have to have that value. So that part I don't know how they can control it, how they're gonna manage it, but they're working on that. And so that's why I can see collectives coming in-house. And so if you have a collective now, I could see them funneling that money through your foundation, through us, to go and say, okay, now we're gonna, whether we control your NIL rights or I'm gonna pay you as our quarterback, so that when we put you on a poster and a schedule card and we do graphics, social media graphics, I'm paying for that now, and we're going to funnel that way and do it. And we can do that across multiple sports and multiple student athletes and be able to do it that way. And the question then now is Title IX involved with that or not? So we have to figure out that. And then you'll still have NIL on top of that, but those are supposed to be truly market driven. I'm going to do a Ford commercial, and there's a true value there, and you are Shedeur Sanders and have the value to get that pay versus now we're funneling through campus. So
Do any of the student athletes come to your department and ask, or do you go and offer to help them build their brand? Or do you, again, and I know because we've talked with the student athletes, you will also help them not break their brand. Maybe I'll do a
yep.
podcast on don't break your brand, and
Yes.
whether that's inappropriate activities or places or
Yes.
things. So
Yep.
we're going to write that down. Don't break your brand, but to build your brand. Is that where it's off campus, or you guys help with that?
Yeah, I certainly feel like we could probably do a better job with that, but we do have within what we have an app for our student athletes that basically educates them on how to help build your brand. And then we also have a space where you can reach out to people that want to do business with student athletes. And then within that, you can actually do the transaction within that application. And then now we're adding a new feature where they're actually going to get paid within that, so they have a wallet, and you're going to be able to do that. And the brand is really important. I would say you need to be yourself, and don't try to copy somebody else in your brand. The cool thing at Eastern is every photo we take gets basically meta tagged for you. And so after a football game or after a basketball game or lacrosse or whatever, you can go in a day or two later and it's in your profile and you can use that for whatever you want. And so now you're getting your images that you can share to others. And
Even if they have the
again,
E on there and the
yeah,
logo?
yeah, because they can do it for themselves. Now, if they're doing it for another company, that company needs to be shared with us. We need to be able to use the E. But again, social media, Instagram, they're just putting out posts about whatever about themselves and building their brand, and look at this goal or whatever, and look at my celebration. They can use that every day of the week. And then maybe the next post after it is about, your financial or whatever it is. And it's separate.
Come and do stuff
Yeah,
with
that's
What Do
right.
We Do
Yeah,
in Great Lakes Wealth,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. And have that. So yeah, so I would, encourage them. I mean, we try to help them to understand that, and we obviously, your football coaches and stuff are gonna be like, the name on the back is just, the name on the front is just important, name on the back. And um, you know, you gotta remember that you're always on. That's one of the greatest things about it, but it's also to your detriment. And so when you want to go out and maybe do something that you don't want others to see or do, they're probably always going to see somebody has a camera. And so you got to have your own like little inner circle of people of trust that you can, if you're trying to let your hair down a little bit and not let people see stuff. But you have to always remember you're always building your brand every time a camera comes on, or by somebody takes a picture, or even just when you're out. I mean, you see paparazzi and people react bad, and then that turns out to be a negative. I mean, you have to deal with that. One of the other things in the brand that I would tell you is to try not to read all the comments, because you're going to have haters. I mean, I try to be the nicest human being. I try to make everybody like me. But I know people that don't think I'm doing a good job at Eastern. There are people that don't think I should do things differently, and that it's just a part of it. And so you try not to read that, right? But I also don't try to just read all the positive things either. I just don't read any of it. And I let my staff come to me and they can tell me about it. But when I cut sports, I'm off of social media, so I don't do as much on that. But always building your brand, always thinking about being yourself, and don't be afraid to be uncomfortable. That's I tell our student athletes that all the time. You have got to put yourself out there. That's the way you grow, by putting yourself out, and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, meaning things that you don't want to do, but it'll better you. Not putting yourself in harm's way. But I think that's really important, and I try to tell that to my kids. Of you can't be afraid to go speak in front of your class. You have to do those things. I mean, and then when you're done, you're like, man, that wasn't so bad. And then the next time you do it, it's even better. Like I'm coming on shows and doing podcast stuff that you get used to it, and I start to know what people are going to ask and stuff, but there's still, you get nervous, and but then when you're done, you're like, oh, that's not bad. I get in front of
Well,
500.
we want to make sure we got a nice
Yeah,
setting
we're
for you.
comfortable and
Want some
stuff. Yeah,
couches,
go in the basement and we're good to go.
Yeah,
Right.
that's it.
But I even tell my student athletes, you think like when I get up in front of 500 student athletes and talk that I'm not anxious about it, but yeah, but that's how I grow. And and so don't be afraid to do those things as part of your brand. I mean, that's how we mature, and that's how we figure out what we like and don't like, and those things as well.
Well, Scott, I'm going to tell you that we work with athletes at Eastern Michigan University directly and indirectly.
Yep.
We also work with people within the university's administration organization.
Yeah.
We also work within the community and people who are alumni and followers and excited to be part of the Eastern Michigan University community. And I haven't heard anyone say a negative thing about you. Okay, so those negative comments and those haters, I'm not hearing them, and then maybe they're there, but I'm telling you, you got a lot of lovers out
You
there.
must not know a lot of
Okay,
people now.
well, maybe that's the case, but the ones I know, they're
We
very
try.
proud to have you where you're at. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And this is a
Yep.
good part to go to my favorite part of the
Okay.
show, and you touched on it earlier, but we are going to call this the segment instead of what do we do, because everyone gets sick and tired of hearing what I do. Okay, I'm on here all the time. What do we do?
Yep.
This segment's called What Scott Do. What would Scott go tell his 18-year-old self
Yep.
or other 18-year-olds out there today so they can live their best life?
Yeah, I think I hit it a little bit earlier, but don't be as an 18-year-old, it's okay to not know what you want to do, and you're in a point in time like you're like I was trying to make decisions at 18 of like where am I going to go play baseball and what kind of, what should I study, and you're trying to figure that out, and it's like it's okay to not know exactly. I mean, that's you have 18 to 22 to kind of start to figure that out. And so I would tell myself to just to relax, enjoy it, and not always be looking for the next thing. A lot of the 18-year-olds right now, it's like that's why the transfer portal is crazy. They always think the grass is greener and everything needs to be done now. I would just, take a deep breath. I saw something the other day that's like, um, when you go to college, it's okay to be bored. Like that's a part like you're used to in high school, right? You get up in the morning, you eat, you go to class all day, you do your sport, you have dinner, you do a few things, do homework, and then you go to bed, and that's your schedule. You get to college, all of a sudden you have Monday, Wednesday class, but you might only have class for 2 in the morning. You have the whole afternoon, and you're like, and if you're in a sport or not in a sport, and so it's like it's okay to just like it's quiet and you're not going crazy, nothing's wrong with you, and,
Great time to put on the
yeah,
podcast, What Do We Do, and listen to an episode.
yeah, that's right, exactly. There you go, take advantage of that time. So, that's what I would just I would tell myself to, do, always do whatever you can, where you're at, and if you work hard, people will notice and things will kinda take care of themselves, kind of the advice I even give my student athletes now and my daughter now.
And is your daughter 18 or thereabouts?
She's
So,
19, gonna be
okay.
20 in February. Yep. So sophomore in college, and we, she's trying to figure out. She thinks she wants to be a physical therapist, but then there's other days she's not sure. And she actually did physical therapy this summer as an internship and loved it. But it's 3 years of school post graduation, and we're trying to figure that out. And I'm like, it's okay to not know and don't panic. And she's all putting pressure on herself, and I'm like, yeah, we'll figure it out, and go from there.
Well, appreciate that. And we are running out of time. So, is there anything else that you can tell our audience or share with our audience about either reaching the athletic department at Eastern Michigan University? Check out Eastern Michigan University. Anything else that you want to share with our audience before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I mean, obviously one of the best places to go is to emueagles.com. That's got all 19 sports. It's got our directory to reach out to people. I would encourage you if you haven't come to campus. A lot of times it's just getting people to campus to understand our campus is beautiful. We have done a lot with our facilities. We've done a lot of improvements on the athletic side of things that I'm super proud of. I'd encourage you to come out to a basketball game. Basketball team's doing all right, and come see us play, and just come see the experience and try it out. And if you're looking to go to college, um, Eastern is a great place. My daughter's really happy there. We got brand new apartments. Our housing is great. And academically, she feels like she's in a good space, and I feel good about what we're selling. So come give us a try. So that would be my spiel.
All right. Well, appreciate that, Scott. It's
Yeah.
been great having you today. With that, I'm going to wrap up the show, and I'm going to tell everyone out there in YouTube land and podcast nation, thanks again for tuning in to another What Do We Do podcast episode. I always say, live your best life, be radically generous, a great big booyah to ya. And this has been another episode, but we're just getting started. We go booyah to ya.
Booyah. Love it.
That was great. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general information purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or any specific security. It's only intended to provide education about the financial industry. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. As always, please remember investing involves risks and possible loss of principal capital. Please seek advice from a licensed professional.